Good evening, everyone. We continue on from where we left off in chapter 19. As you recall, in chapter 19, as soon as Saul swore to Jonathan that he would not kill David, soon enough, he actually changed. An evil disposition got on him, and he really turned crazy and tried to kill David by throwing a spear at him and just missed him narrowly and it hit the wall and David fled. Now that was where we left off, and that would be in chapter 19, verse 10. And bear that in mind because that traumatized David because he was so close to be killed. Now, what we read in the rest of chapter 19 was Saul really went after David, sent men after him, but could not find him and could not kill him. Now, David was with Samuel at Naioth in Ramah, and that is where our narrative story continues. In verse 1, then David fled Naioth in Ramah. This word fled literally means run away. He he ran away, he fled, he, I don't know, hastily, quickly ran off. And where did he go? Interestingly, he came to see Jonathan. And that would be where Saul is. He went back. And then he had this very intimate conversation with Jonathan. And that is what we will spend some time discussing in this first part. When David met Jonathan, this is what David says. What have I done? David, what is my iniquity? That would be his avon. Right? This is how the Hebrews speak. Right? What is my avon? What is my sin? And the word sin here is khatat, right? Khatat. Khatat. So there is iniquity, there's khatat. And what is happening that he is seeking my life? Now, what is the situation here is that David is seeing that Saul was bent to kill him. And in this conversation with Jonathan, and remember, Jonathan loves David as his own nephesh. It will come back again. And this is where all comes to a head, what it means. Why is Saul seeking my life? What have I done that deserves to be killed? So that's basically what this means. You know? What did I do that deserves to be killed? Now, in the Hebrew culture, you don't, well, in the normal circumstances, judgment is because there is an avon, there is a khatat done against the king, right? That he is seeking. So, what has David done to Saul? That is the question. Why would Saul want to kill David? Now, notice the idea of Avon and Khatat is used from the eyes of the beholder as well. It can be done towards God, and God sees it as an Avon, and he sees it as a Khatat, that you have missed what I want you to do. Now, what has this got to do between two persons, David and Saul? Yes, in the Hebrew sense of the word, you can also do avon and khatat against another person. Now, if this other person was Saul, and remember, Saul is king, and as king, he has power to take a life. And so David was saying, what have I done to deserve death, like him to want to kill me? He said to him. Now, who is he and who is him? So we have Jonathan replying to David. And the reply is interesting. Far from it. Far from it. It's nothing like this. What do you mean far from it? This word here, far from it, is similar to these ideas, let it not be, or God forbid. These are all Hebrew expressions. No, it cannot be, it cannot be. It's not like that. You shall not die. Not die. Look, my father does nothing, either great or small, without first telling me. That is Jonathan's thought, right? Without revealing. And this word here, disclosing, is without revealing first to me. And this is important because the idea here is Jonathan is saying that Jonathan and Saul is like two peas in a pod, so to speak. Why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. It is not true. It's not true. He would not hide this. The idea of hide is, well, I guess you can say, cause to conceal. So Jonathan is very sure that Saul does not harbor such a thought, but David is thinking very differently because David was almost stabbed with his spear. Now, let's look at verse 3. Verse 3 says, yet David vowed again. This word here is really to establish a very serious statement. A very serious statement. It says, your father knows well that I have found favor in your sight. Now understand this. This would be David. And this is Jonathan. In your sight literally means in your eyes. And this idea is about favor right here. And this is grace. Again, I point out to you that we have Jonathan, and he sees, right? He actually sees something in David. And whatever David has done, there is the idea of grace, is from what he has seen in David, that Jonathan loves David as his own nephesh. And grace is the idea of favor. So Jonathan will treat David very well, very well. And he has said, do not let Jonathan know this, or he will be very sad. He will be very hurt. I guess you could say this. He'll be very hurt. He'll be in pain. Now, this is David continuing, but truly as the Lord lives. This is the vow, right? Truly as the Lord lives is a vow. And as your nephesh lives, there is hardly a step between me and death. And this means that David is being very serious. I'm not kidding you. There's only one step between me and death. And this would be seen in chapter 19, verse 10. That at one step, If he hadn't stepped one step faster, he would have been thrusted with the spear of Saul. And there he had escaped his death. And so in David's mind, it is very real. In Jonathan's mind, it cannot be. Understand this as well. Jonathan is Saul's son. I mean, there is a relationship between father and son. And Jonathan and David is Jonathan and a very, very good friend, a bosom buddy. Now, as you know, in Oriental terms, blood is thicker than water. The family relationship generally comes first when it comes to choosing between family and friend. However, in this particular case, Jonathan and David is not just merely between friends. Look at what Jonathan has to say. And Jonathan said to David, he says, whatever you say, I will do for you. This is that Jonathan is treating David as his nephesh, as if David was himself, right? His being. So he would protect everything about David. And if David wanted anything from Jonathan, Jonathan will always do. Why? Because of this concept of loving David as his own nephesh, that he will give, he will provide, he will protect David as if it was his own being. And so nothing will come or no harm will come to David. This is the concept that we need to bear in mind, that it's not just mere friends. It is not just bosom buddies, as how many authors would put it. This is the concept of two Oriental persons, Jonathan and David, though not tied by blood. It is nevertheless a brother-in-law through Michal, but it wasn't because of that relationship. It was always there before the marriage to Michal. Jonathan loved David as his nephesh, keeps repeating itself. And because you keep seeing it in the text, it is to remind us today, given our 21st century Greco-Roman mind, to really focus and appreciate the kind of bond that they had. Verse 5. So David said to Jonathan, what do I want you to do? This is what I want you to do. Look, tomorrow is the new moon. Now, interestingly, verse 5, this is very much a, how would you say, the new moon is always a celebration. And this was given in the book of Numbers, and we covered Numbers chapter 28 yesterday. This instruction is every new moon, Saul treats as a feast, right? Treats as a special day. And so they would eat together. And David said, I ought to sit. Now, I ought to sit is not quite the meaning. I always or surely sit down. This is what it means. I ought. It is not I ought. I will surely sit. I always sit. I'm very accustomed to sit down and eat with the king. But let me go that I may hide myself in the field until the third evening. The third evening means it is today, tomorrow, and this is the third evening. So this is how the third evening is counted. On that third evening, that would be the today, tomorrow, and the third. Verse 6. If, Now, this is a condition if, and this is a test as well. If your father misses me at all, misses means, how should we say it? Well, I guess you could say that misses as wish he was there, right? Misses would actually uh, hope he was present, as in a good way, right? In a good way. This word is in a good way. Then say, David earnestly asked of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, because it is the annual sacrifice. This is the annual sacrifice there for the whole family. There is a family event that he has to go back. And that's what you need to tell your father. All right. Now, watch verse 7 onwards. In verse 7, if, again, a condition, if he says it is good, means it is tov, then your servant will be saved. And the word save here is shalom. So think of it this way. If he says it is tov, then your avad is shalom. Then the next one, if he is very hot, right? This one is very hot. Of course, it's like the English word angry. So the Hebrew expression is actually more vivid, right? More action oriented. If it's hot, it's very angry, then you should know that he has decided on Ra or Ra'ah here. And so there is a test. Look at his disposition. Look at his disposition. Therefore, deal kindly with your servant. Deal kindly is show chesed. David, this is David. David sees himself as the servant of the king, right? And for Jonathan, as the son of a king, it's the same, because the son of a king is part of the royalty. And so David is called your servant. For you have brought your servant into a covenant of the Lord with you, that we have made a pact, right? We have made a pact. This is a berit of the Lord. And we've seen this pact last week. Now, based on this pact, David is asking Jonathan this: if there is any avon, this is avon, if there is any avon in me, then you can kill me yourself, right? Kill me yourself. Because they have a bond, they have a covenant, they have a formal promise that it is better for David, as he says, David, to die in the hands of Jonathan. For why then should you bring me to your father? That if I had done any avon against your father, you can put me to death. You see, all this if is very important in the Hebrew language, just as in our English language. It is a condition testing whether it is happening or otherwise. And this is the kind of bond that David had with Jonathan, that Jonathan made a pact, made a covenant in the Lord's name. And so David says, if I really have offended your father, if I've really done bad against your father, don't bring me back to your father. You can take my life. You can execute the judgment. Verse 9, Jonathan's reply, He says, be it far. Again, if you know what this means, be it far from you. Since we are new to this, this is uh, let it not be, right? God forbid. And that is basically how it says, no, 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 don't say these kinds of things. And so this will be a lot of very polite language, right? God forbid, let it not be from you. Nothing, you can't do anything like this. For if I should indeed learn that evil has been decided by my father, and this would be the Ra'ah. What is this evil? To hunt David down to kill him, to come upon you, then would I not tell you about it? And this is how close Jonathan is with David. For him to choose, he actually chooses the loyalty with David rather than with Saul. That is the case here. Loyalty is with David. Why? Because David is the nephesh of Jonathan. It's like himself. It's like himself. Then David said to Jonathan, then who will tell me if your father answers you harshly? The word harshly literally means hard, right? When if he's cruel, when he is grievous. If your father really wants to kill me, who is going to inform me? Who is going to tell me that is what's going to happen? So Jonathan said to David, don't worry, come. Let us go out into the field. Now, this is very interesting because in the Hebrew, go out into the field. You find this in Genesis chapter 4, between Cain and Abel. And so both of them went out to the field, and that's generally it. Now, the field would be where there is plantation, there's agricultural activity. And it would be, I would say, the Hebrew way of going into the jungle, somewhere that they could hide amongst the crop. And because they don't have the kind of jungle at that place, right? So they said, let's go into the field. So they went to the field. Then Jonathan said to David, says, the Lord, the God of Israel, and it says, be witness is, how should we say, it's not there in the Hebrew, but it's not wrong. The intent is for Jonathan to swear to David. So you could say, by the Lord of Israel. This is a formal oath. He is that serious as well, right? When I have sounded out my father, now this word sounded is an English word. In the Hebrew meaning, when I have searched out, when I have found out what my father is thinking, when I have examined his thoughts about this time tomorrow or the third day, behold, if there is good towards David, then shall I not send to you and make it known to you? And so this is about tomorrow or the third day. Now remember that it is now, then it is tomorrow, And then it is the third day. So this is basically the agreement that if you find out in these 2 days, let me know whether your father is good, Tov. If Tov, I will let you know. Verse 13. If it please my father to harm you, right? And this would be Ra'ah. Ra'ah. In verse 13, this is Ra'ah. Evil, basically. Right? Evil. Notice it is a contrast. It's always a contrast in Hebrew between good and evil. And so good and evil doesn't mean necessarily moral good and moral evil. It literally means what works out is good, what does not work out, what is harmful, what is not agreeable, that's evil. So if my father intends to do you evil, may the Lord do so to Jonathan and more also. Now, this is how he has sworn. If my father intends to kill you, then may the Lord punish Jonathan himself. If I do not make it known to you and send you away, that you may go in safety. The word safety here is shalom. If Jonathan is not going to tell you and Jonathan hides from you, then may God strike me. May God hurt me. And if I do tell you, may the Lord be with you, as he has been with my father. Now, this idea, he has been, merely tells us that this is over. It means that at one point in time, God was with Saul, right? God was with Saul. And this ended in chapter 15. And we're now in chapter 20. So from that day onwards in chapter 15, Samuel said, I'm not coming to see you again. And Jonathan is very well aware of what has happened. All right, what has happened. So the idea here is Jonathan is saying that if I do not make it known to you and send you away, that you may be in shalom, then may God do so to Jonathan. Do what to Jonathan? Do ra'ah. Do this evil, the harm to Jonathan and more. This is how the Orientals speak. And I guess if you watch some of the ancient China movies, right, Chinese movies, you might think that, whoa, they are so dramatic. Yes, but that's how they speak. And they are using formal oaths and swearing that, no, I will definitely do this. If not, let God strike me down, and that kind of thing. And so this is, verse 13 is a kind of Oriental expression. Verse 14, if I am still alive, if I'm still living, right? If I'm still living, one day later, will you not show me the loving kindness of the Lord that I may not die? What does this mean? This actually says that, God is going to cut off the loving kindness from Saul. And by loving kindness, it is chesed, the mercy of God. That show me, will you, that will be David, that one day when you become king, and if I'm still alive, show me your loving kindness. Do not kill me. And he is making David promise that you shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever. Not even when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. And this, he understands that God is with David. The word cut off is karat. And this literally means to I guess to put an end, put an end, right? Put an end, uh, to cut out your chesed from my house forever. This is my house, and my house is also the house of Saul. And later, you would find that uh, David takes care of the children of Saul, who was still alive at the time when David became king. Carrying on in verse 16, so Jonathan made with the house of David, saying, may the Lord require at the hands of David's enemies that God will take care of David's enemies, will end David's enemies at the hands of David's enemies. Require it means to karat, right? To karat them. But this is a pact that you need to, you really need to make with between Jonathan and David. And so this idea of a covenant that was inserted by the translator requires us to see verse 17. It is actually an interjection by introducing verse 17 into verse 16. Verse 17 says, Jonathan made David vow again because of his love for him, because he loved him as he loved his own life. What does that mean? First of all, vow again, this would be an oath by the name of God because of his love for him. This is Jonathan. It's always Jonathan for David, because Jonathan loved David as Jonathan loved Jonathan's own nephesh. Jonathan treats David as himself, basically his own being. And after this, Jonathan said to him, look, tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed because your seat will be empty. When you have stayed for 3 days, you shall go down quickly and come to the place where you hid yourself on that eventful day, and you shall remain by the stone at Zel. This word here in other places says that this is the stone of the travelers. Now, perhaps it is in the field and there's a road, and the field is on the left and on the right. And in that road itself, there is a rock. There is a rock. And so what Jonathan is trying to tell David is, you go and hide behind that rock and around there, and I will then discuss with my father, and I will show you signs of how he would be. And so be there, wait for my cue. And that's what verse 19 is all about. Verse 20, then Jonathan explains. He says, I will shoot 3 arrows to the side as though I shot at a target. So we find that perhaps we have Jonathan and he shoots an arrow. And he will shoot towards the rock. And he will shoot towards the rock. And verse 21 says, and behold, look, I will send the young boy. He says, go find the arrows. And you find that the young boy should be out there somewhere. Let's say this young boy is here, right? The young boy. Go look for the arrow. And why is he there? Is that as he calls out, David, who is hiding here, will know what's happening. And so these would be their code words. And this is an ancient Hebrew, I guess, two young men planning, hatching this secret handshake or secret code. If I specifically say to the lad, behold, the arrows are on this side of you, get them, then come, for there is safety for you and no harm, as the Lord lives. Now, verse 21 basically say, behold, the arrows are on this side of you. Are on this side of you means that it is on the near side, right? A is on this side. And so the arrows are here. If it is here, it means that it is safe for David to go. And so the idea of safe is shalom. It is shalom for you. And there will be no harm. Now, the word no harm is implied, right? This word is just and nothing else. So you come in shalom and nothing else, as the Lord lives, right? And this is like clearly an oath. This is what I am going to do. This is what I am going to do. Now, in verse 22 is the second instance. What happens? But if I say to the youth, behold, look, the arrows are beyond you. Now, what does it mean beyond you? The word beyond you is between you and the rock, way beyond, right? As making an interval. So go, for the Lord has sent you away. Now, this idea in verse 22, it says, if I say to the lad, look, the arrows are beyond you, are how should we say, are from you, are further from you, so you should walk away. So the idea here beyond is how should we say, it's on the other side. On the other side. And what he's trying to do is, if the arrow is said to be here, is further away, is telling this chap here that no, it's way beyond you, then it is a signal to David then to go away. So that would be that secret handshake, I suppose, between Jonathan and David. Now, this is very important for us to understand that Jonathan is doing this because Jonathan treats David as his own nephesh. He is on the side of David because David is like him, is part of him. Do not have the idea that David is just another bosom buddy. He is literally treating David as himself. And of course, he would protect himself. He would provide for himself. And that's what it means that he loved David as his own nephesh. All the words we see in this little engagement, this little plan that's hatched, how the communication is going to be, is all demonstrating how close Jonathan is with David, because Jonathan has preferred to defend David and to find out from his father what was his intention. And we shall come to the end here and we'll continue tomorrow. We end in verse 22. Any questions? Okay, we'll continue tomorrow then.
Pastor,
Bye-bye, everyone.
Pastor,
Yes.
may I know that David and Jonathan, what is the age gap?
I think I don't quote me, but I think Jonathan is older than David.
Oh, so they can get along.
David
so
is late 20s, close to 30, and Jonathan would be much older, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
See you
Thank you,
tomorrow.
Pastor.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pastor. Bye.
Bye.